What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 43 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk to you about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And today we're joined by Jason Anderson, owner of Trillium Maintenance, and he's here to share his story, a very important story of mental health for us as entrepreneurs and landscapers in the industry. And this is an especially important topic to discuss in our Health Week, one I feel that does not get enough attention. And I was happy when Jason reached out to us with his story, which prompted us to create this episode. And I want to very personally thank Jason for sharing his story in this interview, and be sure to listen to the network that he wants to establish at the end of this interview in terms of outreach for landscapers in the industry. So be sure to show Jason some love on his Instagram for sharing his story. He is at Trilli2010. That's TRILLI 2010. And if you need someone to reach out to, be sure to reach out to him to learn more about what he wants to do for this industry, or even reach out to us at How to Hardscape on Instagram. We always look at every Instagram direct message, so feel free to reach out to us. And without further ado, here's our interview with Jason Anderson. Today, we're joined by Jason Anderson, and he's the owner of Trillium Maintenance, Inc. And he is here today to talk with us about mental health and his story as an entrepreneur. Jason, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Hey, thanks for having us, Mike.
Jason, you reached out to us and you talked about mental health and this need for having a discussion on the podcast for mental health. So thanks so much for reaching out to us and prompting this episode that we're going to have in our Health Week podcast that we're doing. But let's get started to get to know a little bit more about yourself, Jason, and your journey in this industry. Can you give us a little bit of a background on that?
Absolutely, I can. So I started in this industry as I was 15, as most people, pushing a lawnmower, 38 now, well, going on 38, 37, about to get there. And at about the age of 28, I started this company called Trillium Maintenance, Inc. I worked for a fellow, and with him, I was there for 10 years. I became his apprentice. I went to horticulture apprentice school at Humber College, and from there, I fell in love with landscape design, and that propelled me towards the hardscape industry. I'd always kind of dabbled with interlocking steps, retaining walls, doing gardens, but it wasn't until I actually opened this company that I really got hard into it. And from there, just things propelled. You get into home shows, you get into Facebook ads, you get into Instagram, all these avenues, and you start meeting people, talking, and doing some jobs that are really quite spectacular, interesting, and going places that you never really thought you'd go. So that's kind of a little bit about me and where we started.
Absolutely. And what year did you decide to start your company?
That was 2010. So I actually was enrolled in the apprenticeship program at Humber, and I was going to night school for landscape design at the same time. So I started this business doing 67 hours of full-time school, plus having a job, and then starting a business.
Incredible. So lots of things on your plate during that time, and being a business owner is always a stressful situation at times. And, that brings us to what we're going to get into talking about today. And let's just get started to learn more about your journey as an entrepreneur. Starting with exactly where we left off there, that 67 plus hours of schooling, having a job, and starting your business. What kind of stress did that bring about in your life?
At the time, I didn't really notice the stress. So it was more just hustling, right? Head down, got to do what I got to do. Had a beautiful woman beside me. So, everything was good. Everything was on the up and up. It wasn't until about, a year later that I realized, hell, this is a hard gig, right? You don't just show up every day. You don't just take your jacket off at the end of the day. You really got to hustle and hustle and hustle hard to make a difference. And there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people out there. That's just what it takes, right? So one day, I woke up and I went, holy crap, like, I'm actually doing this. But how am I actually doing this? What have I done that actually got me to this point, right? And I didn't really know. I didn't really understand how I had done any of it. All I knew was that I just got to keep going and going and going and going. And I started gaining weight. right? And that affects your health quite a bit. The stress was really packing on the pounds with me, not sleeping correctly, being on the road all the time, eating out, no time to get home and relieve the stress, working Saturdays, Sundays. I did this for years, Mike. And this is a very common practice in our industry to get going. And we think it's a normal thing, right? Kind of puts really a lot of stress on the people around you as well, right? And that beautiful woman that I was with, well, she was no longer there. And I was stuck on my own doing all this, which is fine because that's what we are. We're hustlers. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And just kept saying to that to myself, just keep going. The next step is there. The next step is there. The next step is there. And I created this culture for myself and inside of my company that, we're going to work as much as we can. And I didn't finish my landscape design until my first year of actual entrepreneurship. And I went out and I said, you know what, I got to practice my design. So I started designing for other companies. I designed for a couple big companies in Toronto and a couple small companies out here, plus designing for myself, plus installing for myself, plus also going out and getting work for myself, plus dealing with payroll, taxes, all sorts of things. And I took on every single little thing I could, thinking that was the best way, if you know what I mean. And inside of this, I created this massive stress ball that I couldn't really get out of. Right? It wasn't until about 5 years later where I really started to realize this, that my entire life had been engulfed by this company. And I had made it to a certain point financially where now I could step back, right? And now I could bring on different people, different talent. I could share my talent now with my employees and train people better and do this, that, and the other. I had gotten through to that 5-year mark, and that was a really big turning point for me. At that point in time, gosh, Mike, I was about 260 pounds. I'm 5'8", and I should be about 175 pounds, 185 pounds lean, right? So my health was not there, but I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and the stress built up and all of these things built up. One day I came home and I'd found my father passed away. All of this stress instantly hit, right? And it developed into an anxiety disorder. There was nothing I could really do about it except for hustle. This was the culture that we all fall victim to, right? Is just hustle, hustle, hustle. So instead of grieving, instead of going through the process, I hustled. I took this anxiety, I pushed it to the side. I took this depression, I pushed it to the side, and I filled it with work. And probably the worst thing I did for myself. I still continued to grow. I still continued to do jobs. About 3 months later, I had a backache. And I said, this doesn't feel like a normal backache. I think I have a hernia. I go to see my doctor, and the doctor says to me, there's just something doesn't look right about you. You're a landscaper, you just don't look right. You shouldn't be this white. You shouldn't be this pale. I said, okay, whatever. Do the test. I got to get back to work type thing. The next day I get called into the emergency room, and I come to find out that I'd been bleeding internally for years on end due to stress, due to what's called a Cameron's ulcer. And these Cameron's ulcers are actually fairly rare, but are associated with stress, anxiety, all sorts of other issues that we go through in life. So I had bled out so much, I had they described it as you're 90% water, 10% gasoline. Your car's not going to run anymore, right? From there, I had to have a life-altering surgery. We don't know what happened, but my stomach actually distended into my chest and was wrapping around my heart. The whole time I had been working, Mike. These people were looking at me and they say, did you actually walk in? I said, yeah, I walked in. Did you actually drive yourself here? Yeah, I drove myself here. Well, by all physical standards, you should be having a stroke and you should be having a seizure right now. You shouldn't be standing here laughing and having a good time with us. So this is the hustle culture, right? This is what it pushes us to do. And I don't know if you know anybody that's like this, Mike, but I know a lot of people that work 7 days a week in this industry. In fact, I don't know many that don't.
Absolutely. And you talked, there's a lot to sort of digest in your story, and it's so important to talk about these things and get them out there, because if you spend your whole day on social media, you'll see this hustle culture, and it can be really detrimental to your health. And like you mentioned there, you might not notice it right away, but all of a sudden one day you'll wake up and you'll have all these health problems that you talked about there. Let's talk a little bit about that, because that hustle culture um, is good for some in the short term, but then you put so much stress on yourself, and then something like real life hits you. Like you mentioned, your father passed away, and that can be extremely a stressful situation when you have to keep up with your business. Maybe you stretch yourself a little bit too thin, and now like real life comes into play and it hits you like a ton of bricks. How do you handle, how do you get past something like that when you are an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, unfortunately for us, you just have to get past it, right? But there is people out there that can help you, right? You know, when you lose somebody, you're going to go through depression, anxiety. Everybody's going to deal with it differently, but most of us just internalize it. And as business owners, we really just push harder because that's all we know how to do. But there's people out there that can help you. There's crisis lines, there's Ontario health lines, there's therapists, there's psychotherapists. Go see your doctor, right? And ask him, tell him what you're going through, and they can lead you to the right direction. Reach out to your family, even a friend, you know, or somebody outside of the whole circle. For me, I didn't reach out for that help. It wasn't until this year that I actually reached out for help. And it took me a long time to realize that I needed some sort of person to talk to about all these issues, right? And that's the second part of the story we'll get to. But this is what people can do. You can stop for a second, because the day that I found my father passed away, I actually went out and I continued because I had no idea what to do. I actually continued. I did more quotes. That's not right, but that's all I knew, right? That was literally my entire life. And the hustle culture had engulfed me to that point. And the next day I sat down and I said, crap, I don't know what else to do. I can't do anything else. Where do I go? What do I do? This, that, and the other. And as many people came at me and said, hey, Jay, you know, here's somebody to talk to. My cousin works for the DRPS, and she handed me a number one day for the crisis hotline. And I took it, I crumpled it up, I threw it in the car, and I continued on about my life. That was the wrong thing to do, right? You really got to stop for a second, Mike. You really got to take a look at what's going on around you, and you really have to understand what's best in that moment. And it's not necessarily going to be your company. Your company is going to survive. You need to take 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, whatever you feel you need. Your company is still going to be there, and the employees you have set up are still going to be there, right? And the loyalty that they have to you and you have to them is really going to show in that instance, right? And you may go through some issues, right? You may not have the best employees, but you know what? That's great, because now you know times are tough and you need to lean on them like they've lent on you. Perfect. They're not the right employee. You can go into a proper way now of going forward, right? But it really does start with reaching out to somebody. Don't just put your head down and work. Take some time for yourself to grieve or to do whatever you need to do. Me, I found race car driving is super fun, gets a lot of steam out of me, and is a positive way to get going. So go out to the track, have some fun, maybe get in a go-kart, whatever. But don't just fall into work, because that's what I did.
Yeah, it's so important to have a hobby outside of your you know, your passion that you put into a job or to start a business. You know, hopefully you're passionate about your business when you start it, but to also have a hobby outside of that that isn't reliant on you earning an income from it. It's just a release, and that's so important in my life as well. But also, you talked about reaching out to somebody, talking to somebody. We're gonna get into this a little bit later in the interview, but what is it about talking to somebody else, whether it's somebody that might be in the same shoes as you or that hotline that you talked about? What is it about talking to somebody else that helped you kind of overcome this anxiety?
Well, basically just that it's normal, that it's a basic normal response of the body of the mind to the stressors that are going on. It's this situation has pulled you outside of your comfort zone, so to speak, and you don't necessarily know how to deal with it because you never have. And that's okay. That's really okay. You're not any different than anybody else. Most people are going to go through this. There's numbers out there that show this, right? But when I was talking to this person, it was basically just a simple understanding that, you know what, here's somebody I can tell everything to. I don't have to worry about being vulnerable. I don't have to worry about being the tough guy. I don't have to worry about the fact that I have feelings about this, right? And that the next day I can still go out and work, and I can be that tough guy, and I can be the leader for my team, and I can be who I think I am, who I've made this big bubble of who I am, right? But that it's okay to have, I guess, kind of like a duality, I think is what you would call it. You know, you're allowed to be strong on one side. You're allowed to be tough as nails, but you're also allowed to be vulnerable because that's also part of you, right? And when you don't have a good combination of the both of them in between you, and when you just hustle, you're eventually going to hit that roadblock, and it's going to hit you hard. And it may not be in your 30s, it may not be in your 40s, but it's definitely going to be in your 50s. And that's where you start to see a lot of people really get serious health issues, and they can't get past them, right? I myself, I've had one mentor, a beautiful man. He taught me a lot about the maintenance industry, and he passed away early at the age of 56. And that's because all he did was hustle, and he never kept in check his health. And that was life for him. That was the end, right? So if we don't stop and recognize these things now in our 30s, in our early 40s, once we get to our 50s, it's really going to be extremely bad, because you can't reverse it then, is what I'm trying to say. But for me, I guess it really was just somebody saying, you know what, it's okay. This is normal. There's nothing wrong with what you're going through, but let's go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this balancing act is what I'm hearing from you of, a hustle is not bad. It's just, you need to balance it with taking a step back and taking a breath.
100%. And the other thing too, this person that I speak with, she said to me, you got to go through the motions. It's just like, going to a job. You can't start at the end, can you? No, absolutely not. You got to start at the grueling beginning, right? Let's talk with the customer. Let's get this design out there. Let's get a quote that works for them. Okay, we sold that. That's great. Now you got to produce the product. Now we got to dig it. Now we got to battle the rain, the sun, the snow, whatever we're dealing with. And then we can get to that finished product, right? So if you don't go through all of those motions, if you literally just skip to the end every single time, it's going to build up, and it's not going to be good, man.
Now, you also mentioned health issues that came into play in your story. Was this something that you woke up one day and you realized that you might have had this pain, or were there signs along the way, including with your weight gain that you talked about? Were there signs along the way that there is a problem brewing within you and it's going to come to a head, but you just had to keep on pushing forward? Or did you just wake up one day and it was there?
No, 100%. There was signs along the way. I remember cutting some aluminum rail with a hacksaw of all things, because I couldn't get electrical in the plug out front of this house. And I literally started to faint while I was doing this, right? And I said, man, I just don't feel good. Wow, it's 32 degrees out. I'm in the sun. Maybe that's all it is, right? Or, I'm tired every single day. Why am I tired every single day? Well, because maybe it's just because I go to bed at midnight and I'm up at 6 a.m. or at 5:30. Maybe that's all it is, right? There's these little signs, these little indicators that were there the entire time. And then also, I work 7 days a week. Why can't I lose weight? Like what's going on here with my body? I don't eat horribly, but I can't lose the weight. And stress and anxiety will actually cause you to keep weight on, right? And inherently that weight will cause other issues inside of your health. So there was definitely some of those things going on. And, at another point, at a later point, a year later after I had this diagnosis that I had this issue, and, to furthermore that story, I had to go into surgery. All right. So I had to have what's called an afundoplication and hiatus hernia repair, and also a gastric reduction as well. So about a year later after that, because I had never actually gone in and followed the signs, I got insomnia. So I couldn't sleep. Right. And I noticed that building up for the longest time. But Mike, I never actually went and got the help. I never talked to a doctor. I can't sleep. Is there something I can do? All these signs were there, and it just built up to a head.
It's good to recognize those signs and get help before. What do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, something like that. And it seems vital in terms of your mental health. Now, continuing on with your story, Jason, is there anything else that has occurred since then that you'd want to talk about, or where you're at today?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I reached out to you, Mike, and I started listening to podcasts, thank you for the value. It's pretty cool to keep us going and inspired. Just before I had reached out, about 2 to 3 weeks before, I was admitted to the hospital. I had 2 strokes, right? And I was healthy. I was going to the gym, Mike. I was going to the gym 4 days a week. I would work out for an hour and a half, eating right, doing everything I needed to do properly, but I was still hustling like there was no tomorrow. I was doing more work than my guys were. We're a snowplow company in the winter, and I would go out and I would stay up for 24, 30 hours, and that's a normal thing in our industry. We shouldn't be doing that, but that's kind of what you have to do, right? And it came to the point where I was driving in a skid steer, and I started to get weak, and I felt all the signs and symptoms. Thankfully, a buddy of mine called me at the same time as all that was happening and helped me walk through it. I ended up in the hospital for 4 days, right? I'm fully recovered now. I have no issues. And as of last Thursday, I was cleared by the neurologist to go 100% back to work. But should I be going 100% back to work? How am I going to do that now? Where am I actually going to put myself in this situation of my business now, right? Because everything I've done up until this point, up until about a month and a half, 2 months ago, has put me back in the hot seat of a physical issue, right? Now, before that, I'll go backwards again. About a month before that, I ran into a lot of stress, and I seen this COVID-19 thing coming. I had a lot of personal things going on in my life. And I ended up one day, and this is very hard to tell people, but I ended up one day on the floor having a panic attack. Now, I couldn't control it. I couldn't do anything about it. I had no idea what it was. I couldn't speak, yada, yada, yada. It's a very weird thing, and thankfully I've only had it once in my life. At that point in time, Mike, after all of this stuff that I've told you, after the past 5 years of loss, of grief, of physical issues, of anxiety, depression, all these things I was going through, and just hustling, that's when I actually made the decision to go out and talk with somebody. And it's been 2 months since I've started talking with that person, and my anxiety is gone. There's no depression. My health is 100% better, and I'm able to tell people my story and give advice on where they should be going if they're interested in going that direction.
And Jason, thanks for sharing your story, because it's so important to get this message out there so that other people in the same situation understand that it's not abnormal, that they're going through something that is common and can be common, especially for entrepreneurs. A couple things that you mentioned in there is your visits to the hospital. This can be really like a snowball effect, because a lot of stress can come from money. But if you're a business owner and you're in the hospital and you're not out there working, that means you're not making money, which means that's added stress through that all. And if you're in the States and listening to this and you don't have the proper insurance and you're actually having to pay for those hospital bills, that's even more stress. So I can see these health problems just causing increasing amounts of stress in your life, which can just throw things for a loop even worse than they already are. Jason, in terms of reaching out with these troubles in talking to somebody, when do you notice it that you should, this is the time I need to reach out in order to prevent anything from happening in my health?
Well, to be honest, I would say the earlier the better, right? But we're all pretty stubborn men and women, and that's why we're entrepreneurs, because we can go out and we can work through anything that comes our way. But the earlier the better, right? So in my entire journey here in the past 2 months and the months before that, I've always looked at statistics. I like statistics because it's a factual information, right? So in your early 30s, if you run into these situations, you're 35% likely to get a mental health or physical health issue. Once you get to 35, that jumps up to 50%. Up to 40%. Once you get up to your 40s, that jumps up to 50. Once you get to 45, you're looking at more 60, 65%. And as soon as you hit your 50s, you're at about 80% likelihood that you're going to get a mental health issue that's going to lead into a physical issue that will lead into either an abuse, substance, alcoholism issue. And if you don't get it, like what I'm saying earlier, the longer you let it go, the harder it's going to be to get to. So if you recognize that, you don't want to get out of bed in the morning, just tell somebody that. Reach out to somebody. If you realize that when the phone rings, your heart starts to race and you don't have that same vigor to go after that job anymore, just tell somebody. Get out there and get some help. If you realize that you're tired all the freaking time, it's not because you're hustling. Your body can handle it. You're a human. You can go. It's because there's something wrong in the background, right? So don't just suffer in silence, and start early is my message to people.
And I'd even go a step further. And even if you aren't experiencing these things, reach out to other entrepreneurs, other people in your shoes, other landscapers, and get networked, get talking to people, even if there isn't a problem, because when a problem does occur, at least you already have that foundation that you can reach out to and work to solve those issues, those mental health issues, those problems in your business, whatever it may be. And Jason, I know that you've taken it upon yourself to start something. Can you talk a little bit about that? Something that you've started to put together?
So I've talked with a couple contractors, and what we're looking at doing and is basically just saying to people, you know what, whether you're young in the industry or old in the industry, if you need some advice, if something's going on that you can't handle, if you just need somebody to give you a better outlook, or even just, you know what, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, and I don't know who to talk to. We're looking at starting, and it's very in its infancy, but we're looking at starting a network of people, of contractors that have the experience, are in the right position, and are able to take, maybe 2-3 hours out of a week to help a young, just fresh person into our industry, or somebody who's hit a roadblock and doesn't know how to take that next step, right? We've kind of coined it as the reality check program, right? And it's in its infancy, but I found that throughout my process, anytime somebody had given me some advice, that anytime somebody had said, you had priced this too low, or Jason, it's not really that bad, just take a step back and look at it, you can get to the next step, don't worry about it. That's really helped me, right? And one person that I talked to, I'm not going to mention his name, but I talked to this guy, and he's a really good guy. He had a young guy that actually asked him last year, I don't know what to do, I'm starting out, this, that, and the other, and this is a perfect example of how this can help somebody. This guy went to the job site and he said, you know what, this is how you're going to do it. This is how I would suggest you price it, and you can do it. Good luck, right? Well, now we're in this whole COVID-19 thing, and this same person reached out and he says, I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. I can't do that. Well, let's step back a second. You have a $300 trailer payment. You have a $500 truck payment. You know what? If it's really going to break your bank, just let us help you with that until this is all said and done, and let's get to the other side. All this kid really needed was a reality check. right? And that probably stopped him right there from getting into alcoholism or stopping being an entrepreneur altogether, or just hiding in his room and not knowing what the hell to do, right? So this is kind of what we're hoping this program will help people to see, is that, you know what, we all go through this. We all start out a certain way, and some of us make it better than others, but we can all make it, and we can make it together a lot easier than we can separate. So if you have an issue, just reach out and we can help you the best we can. We can't promise anything, but we can definitely be there in a small fashion or a big fashion, however that may be.
And so important. And Jason, is this going to be like sort of virtual meetings and discussions? Are you trying to focus on more local? What can we look forward to with this?
Well, I think it's best that, for me, talking with somebody in the United States, it's a lot different to hardscape in the States than it is up here. So if there's somebody in that person's local area or in that state per se, like, hey, I suggest you reach out to this guy. They'll get back to you when they can, and they'll be able to help you out, right? It's just kind of like an entrepreneur helping hand type thing. And I think it's important that you really have somebody in your area as well, so that way they can really speak to what you're going through in that state, right? Because here in Ontario, the way we build, the way we do things is completely different than the tip of Florida, right? Mm-hmm. We've all taken those ICPI courses and we know the differences, but also the pricing is different. The people are different. The ability of laborers are different, all sorts of things, right? So, and also, I mean, if somebody needs a site visit, we can't really just pick up and drive to Michigan, can we? So I'm hoping that people who are listening to this will see value in it if they can help and reach out. And you can reach out through my Instagram. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm hoping to build this network of professionals that can help people in geographic areas.
Perfect. And Jason, what is your Instagram so that everybody can know where to go?
That is at Trilli 2010, TRILLI 2010.
Perfect. And any other website or anywhere that you can direct them if they want to go to see it?
Well, we're also at www.trilliumlandscapegroup.ca, and we're also on Facebook as well, Trillium Landscape Group and Trillium Maintenance Inc.
Perfect. And Jason, just rounding out this interview, do you have anything else that you want to sort of get off your chest or let anyone know out there that they're not alone in this, especially as an entrepreneur? Any other points that you want to leave us with?
You're not alone. I mean, to go through this construction industry, this is hard. This is one of the hardest industries you're ever going to be in. And it's also one of the most rewarding industries, both financially and mentally as well. You get a lot of great things from this industry, but it is hard. And you're not alone in it. There is people to reach out to. There is people who are willing to help. And if you just start DMing somebody, and if you just start picking up a phone, if you go to, for us, a Landscape Ontario meeting and you don't belong, just go. And there's going to be people there who you can meet and who will shake your hand and give you advice. There is programs out there as well. Let's just say, you find yourself depressed, there is numbers you can go to, Ontario Telehealth, you can go to the youth telehealth, and you can also now reach out for free advice and therapy in Ontario as well through telehealth, right? But in our industry, just don't be shy. Pick up the phone, start talking. And this is how relationships are made. And you're going to find that we really can help each other, because, Mike, there's more work out there than we know what to do with at this point, right? There's more work than there is skilled laborers and skilled companies. So me and my friends, we take the approach of, let's help each other out. Let's let these people reach out, and let's reach out to each other. And that, in this time that we're dealing with right now, with the whole pandemic, with the shutdowns, all that kind of stuff, I think this is where it's going to be more important than ever to actually band together and help each other and take our industry to the next step.
Yeah, and just going off what you said there, I really see with the future of this industry that as more people are not getting into being laborers, getting into this type of industry, our stock is only going to go up, and that means there's going to be so much work for everybody. And you see it on these social media networks, and this community that's being built between everybody, and everybody wants to help out and lift each other up rather than seeing each other as competition. So it's great to see this in the future of the industry. And just going off what you're saying again, mental health is so important, and this is a perfect interview to have, and a very timely one with what's going on in the world right now and all this uncertainty. So Jason, thank you so much for reaching out to us and talking with us about your story on today's episode.
Hey, you're very welcome, Mike. I hope whoever's listening to this, if they need to hear something like this and it helps out, I really hope it does. But don't stay silent. Just reach out.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Visit us at howtohardscape.com for more information on this subject. Let us know what you want to learn about in future episodes by reaching out to us at howtohardscape, or contact us on our email, contact@howtohardscape.com. And feel free to reach out to us to talk about anything that you've got going on. I know these are some difficult times going on right now, but we'd be happy to listen to your story. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.